Hello guys and welcome to part 2 of my Final Fantasy VI soundtrack analysis. In part 1 we had a look on leitmotifs and a few great tracks so far.
And now let's get to the big one, the one that Uematsu himself cursed when he was writing the final battle themes for Final Fantasy VII because he thought he had raised the bar on himself too high with this one. But it still is one of his personal favorites, Dancing Mad. This awesome and huge piece is actually 4 pieces in one. Depending on which of the final battles you're fighting, you will hear the corresponding movement.
A mixture of the opening theme Omen and the track Catastrophe screams out of the speakers with big urgency until the women's choir gracefully enter and bring forward this intoxicating chant. After that, the piece just takes off. With the second movement, it already becomes clear that the instrument of choice in the entire piece is the organ. But I cannot help myself. To me, this movement sounds a little uninspired. It feels so wrong to say it, but I have to say, while this movement serves its purpose, somehow to me it is a little boring, or at least not as good as the rest of Dancing Mad. Not so with the third one. While Kefka morphs from a clown into a god, Uematsu turns his own god mode by acting like he is Johann Sebastian Bach. In this movement you only hear the organ in the style of a toccata in fugue, for example, from 300 years ago. And that switch from major to minor... so awesome. Just a beautiful piece that makes you realize something. Uematsu uses musical elements that would normally be associated with a church. An organ, a choir, music that reminds you of Bach or Handel. That is also meant to point out Kefka's rise to godhood. Not only is his lunacy a subject of Dancing Mad, but also his new achieved position. The fourth movement starts off completely frantic with its numerous changes in time. 4/4s, 4/8s, 3/8s, 4/8s, and so on. And even the beginning of Kefka's theme gets a little playtime. But the amazing second part is different from the rest of the entire piece. It is music that tells you that the finale is right there, and that the evil man is almost finished. You don't hear these calmer and slower pieces in an epic boss fight like this.
But this game is something else, and it allows beauty like this even against, or maybe especially against, Kefka. The only problem with this piece is that you might not hear it properly. When I was fighting Kefka for the first time, I didn't even notice most of this awesome last track, because the fight was just too loud. I have to admit that I could only appreciate it in all its glory years later, thanks to the internet.
Now let's have a look on some character themes. One of the greatest is the theme of Cyan. This honorable and high-ranked warrior is perfectly portrayed by this graceful tune. Although his story is so tragic and sad, his theme is full of bravery and pride, like Cyan himself is. Full of adventure is the theme of the thief. Oh, of course, I mean the treasure hunter Lok. When you hear this music, you kinda get excited and get the wish you'd be on a hunt for treasure with Lok yourself. And true royalty rings in your ears with Edgar and Sabin. The king and the Prince of Figaro get a joint theme that blasts out of the speakers with a fanfare melody. I mean, you all get it. You just cannot hide the fact that the themes are all well crafted and splendidly adjusted to the characters and their stories.
Although each and every character gets his or her own theme, there are 2 themes that can be categorized as main themes, Terras and Celis.
The first big theme to appear comes during the epic opening scene on the voyage to Narsh. Terra's theme is the first character theme you will hear, and you'll hear it a lot, because it is also the theme of the World of Balance. This mysterious young woman has a sad story, yet her theme has a positive spirit. That's where the second main theme, Celis, is different. The character has also a tragic story, and this time the music underlines that. The theme is slow and sad. And with this one we finally come to what I mentioned in the beginning.
Now just a short FYI for you guys. It would be too time-consuming to analyze this theme in detail in this video, and therefore I'm making an entire new video regarding just Celis' theme. In this musicological analysis I can show you how easily Uematsu tells Celis' story using music only. In this case it really pays off to look deeper in between the notes.
Anyway, I said that this game does something with the soundtrack that I never have seen neither before nor afterwards. Do you remember how pointless and out of place the opera scene felt? The opera scene does indeed polarize the entire fanbase, but why does such a pivotal part of the story take such a weird detour?
Fellas, I think that I found a reason. There is actually a way to interpret some sense into the whole opera business of Final Fantasy VI. Now bear with me. As you all know, this story has a massive lineup of characters and side stories, but you start with one character, Terra. It is normal for the first character to appear on a game to be the main one. And although new characters keep showing up, Terra stays the main star of the story up until one point where everything goes down the pooper, what marks the beginning of the Act 2.
You might not realize this switch right away, but it is there. After Kefka destroys the world, all protagonists are spread apart from each other and you don't get to continue the story with Terra. She is nowhere to be found at first. Instead you continue with Celes. After she gets better from her injuries, her step-granddad dies and her theme can be heard. She thinks that she might be the sole survivor of the catastrophe and attempts suicide. But wait, doesn't this scenery remind us of something? Exactly, it's the opera scene. But instead of the flowers, she throws herself from the edge. And what else is the same? Yeah, the music! Her theme becomes the main leitmotif of the game that serves as a connecting bridge between the two acts. Because of the fact that it is her theme that is played during the opera scene in which she sings about missing her hero, and that can be heard in the scene where she misses her friends and is eventually the first who starts looking for them to be able to finally stop Kefka, the spotlights are all on Celes now. Terra is all fine and dandy hiding out somewhere with orphan kids. In this game, the music has the power to actually change the main character. And this isn't even far-fetched. The producers themselves pointed out in interviews that somehow during the course of development, they started to feel more attached to Celes and her story and therefore put more effort into her character and story development. And the assistance of Uematsu's work for this cause is undeniable. And what comes now? After she survives her fall, a bird wakes her up which has Locke's bandana wrapped around it. She realizes that he and the others might still be alive. And what can be heard in this scene? Locke's theme? Oh no. It is the track Forever Rachel, the leitmotif of Locke's grief about the tragic loss of his big love. I mean, come on now. First we hear Celes' track in which she sings about missing her hero, and now the track of Locke in which he misses his old and perhaps new love.
Right at this point, the soundtrack is trying to tell us, no, it is literally screaming at us to unfold the true nature of the game. A story that is divided into two acts, the opera scene, tragedy left and right, and above all, the formidable usage of leitmotifs that are connecting all the dots for us. The soundtrack is showing that this is no ordinary game with a little opera scene in it.
The game itself appears to be a playable opera. We are talking about a game that was made in 1994 for a 16-bit console with 2D graphics. And even though all signs are visible on a TV screen, only through the work of Nobuo Uematsu I finally realized what this piece of art is really about. He didn't just compose the soundtrack to a normal RPG, he wrote the music for a libretto, that is Final Fantasy VI, and therefore completing it into a virtual opera. And what's appropriate after a great performance like this? All actors come back on stage to take the final bow. The last long cutscene starts with each and every character appearing one at a time, accompanied with, how else could it be, their respective themes, which are braided into one big final ending theme.
Given everything I said in this video, this soundtrack must be one of the best, if not the best, ever made. It just doesn't get boring to me after listening to it for 22 years now. So, Mr. Nobuo Uematsu, we all owe you sincere thanks for this one, sir. To you guys, thanks for listening.